welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Wednesday. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking with my good friend, Ivo Young. Ivo is a PhD researcher in quantum entanglement at CERN. He works at the Collider there, and him and I are going to be talking about AI today, and basically just what it is, how it works, what the future looks like, how much should we be freaking out? And yeah, that's the umbrella question is, should we be freaking out about AI? So we got a lot to talk about. Of course, Ivo's opinions on the show are his opinions and not CERN's or the Colliders or whatever like that. But like I said, we got a lot to talk about. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alrighty, and we are here with Ivo. Ivo, what's up, man?
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling in. I mean, people don't know this because why would they know this? But you're in Korea right now.
Yes, I am. It's currently just after midnight. I have had a long day at a conference, and now I'm here to talk a bit about AI, I think.
I know. Well, thank you for being a night owl. I mean, we benefit greatly from your lack of need for sleep, but
I'm glad someone does.
yeah, I've been benefiting. I feel like me personally have been benefiting for a while. So what are you talking about in Korea? I mean, I know, but tell everyone what you've been talking about.
So I'm currently doing a PhD in particle physics. I'm at the University of Glasgow, but I'm affiliated with the ATLAS experiment at the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland.
Which, for people who don't know, that's where they found out about the Higgs boson, right?
Yes, 11 years ago now, in 2012, they discovered the Higgs boson. I don't work on the Higgs boson. I work on another fundamental particle called the top quark, and there's lots of exciting measurements that we're currently doing at the moment.
Do you think the Higgs boson was the most trendy particle of all time? Or like I feel like I've never heard of anything getting more publicity in this field than when the Higgs boson was discovered.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely something that brought it all to mind. It's one of those things that is definitely the pop science particle. It's really the only particle that's been discovered in the lifetimes of many people now. The particle before that was discovered was the top quark, and that was in 95, which was 30 years ago. It is also really the key to the Standard Model as well, and so it proved a lot of theories that have been going around for almost 50 years now. So it really brought everything together, and it was something tangible that we can point to, that we could say we could discover. And I don't think there's going to be anything like that for quite a while, like a new particle. But research, and hopefully we can find something else to try and explain a bit more about the universe.
Yeah, it's super interesting stuff. And I mean, when it gets the nickname the God particle, that's always something. But we're talking about AI here, so people should Google it, though. It's super interesting. I love I mean, the Collider and everything that happens there is so cool. I could take your whole day, and you literally won't sleep tonight if I have it my way. So
maybe we can save that for another podcast.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'll geek out all day. But yeah, we're talking AI, and I'm so happy to have you talk about it because obviously obviously to me, you worked a lot with quantum computers and stuff like that. And it's something that you and I have talked about over the years now. And yeah, I feel like every single day, not only do people just hear the word AI more and more, they hear the franticness about it, what it's going on. They hear, machine learning, all these different algorithms, all these different terms. And it's one of those things where nowadays I feel like everyone kind of has a little bit of an idea of what it is, but not really an idea of what it is. So I guess my first question for you is, what is AI? What is it? And what's the difference between stuff like narrow AI, general AI, all this crap? What are you talking about here?
Yeah, so I'd say just really to give sort of a preface for this as well. AI is something that's really been talked about since the 1950s and 60s. It's been around in the scientific community for a while, and it's been used in particle physics since the 70s. But now, as sort of the tools that are available to the general public have gotten better, people have become aware and they're more conscious of the fact that it's in our lives. And because of that now, people are starting to wonder what impact it could have and how can you actually use it and what does any of this mean? And so, as I've said, it's been around for quite a while, but now people are starting to find out about it. So AI, or artificial intelligence, is just really a word that we use for an algorithm that can learn and adapt. And I guess when people say AI, it reminds them of the intelligence of humans as well. But this, what we call AI, is quite different from the way that we think and learn. AI is really something that is quite new to most people, and I don't think they really know a lot about it. This sort of thing encompasses lots and lots of different kinds of algorithms, so different kinds AI as well. But AI is really, at its most simple level, a technique for computers that we use to mimic human intelligence. And it does this by implementing some sort of decision-making algorithm, doing some problem solving, or learning from experience. And so this can take a number of forms. People talk a lot about AI and machine learning. Machine learning
Hmm.
is not AI. Machine learning is just one approach that you can use to mimic AI. And so it's really a subset of that thing. Machine learning is really when you give a system a problem, and then with that you can try and solve that problem. But machine learning, you can break it down into steps, and where you learn features from data, and you do this without explicitly saying, this is what I want you to do. This is how you can do sort of pattern recognition and make predictions and decisions about data that you have. So say, for example, you want to learn how to tell the difference between images of hot dogs and things that aren't hot dogs. You would have a test set where you have lots of pictures of hot dogs. You get to learn what makes a hot dog unique, and how it's different from any other image. And then you can classify those images based on certain features and things looking a certain way. You can do this a number of different ways, and you can learn sort of unique features on that. And then you can train this on other images as well, and images that aren't part of your test data set. So really, you're not learning about what makes a hot dog a hot dog. You're learning about unique features that that you can learn about, and this allows you to sort of make predictions. It's not 100% accurate, but you can improve this with different sorts of training techniques. The AI that we associate now is things like LLMs, and they work in a slightly different way. So for LLMs, really, so these are sort of large language models,
Hmm.
and these are a kind of artificial intelligence model that has been trained on massive amounts of data. So it's not necessarily a complex algorithm, but they get their power from the size of the model, and it does this by performing a couple of different steps. And these are all very, very complicated calculations, but they really boil down to sort of matrix multiplication. Basically, you can take a word, a phrase, or anything in that, you boil it down to weights, you do training on those weights, and you can make a prediction of what word comes next. And it does this lots and lots of different times. And this allows you to tune your model. But the kind of problems that you get with this model is that you have a certain token window for which the solutions that you generate are valid. And then you've got to sort of learn patterns, rules, and sort of phrases with this as well. So this allows you to sort of prompt it, and then you have the token window where you can get a response that sort of somewhat makes sense. And so this response will kind of be based on what's learned during the training of the model, and it can give you things that may not be right, but if you were to squint and look close enough, it'd be kind of something that you would expect, like an answer that you would expect. But it doesn't really tell you anything new. It only holds a mirror up to the data that you pass into it. And so these models could be full of the biases of your own data. And so a lot of the models that we currently use now, ChatGPT, or other language models that are available, they will sort of reflect the biases of the data that has been passed into it.
Yeah, there's a lot that's really interesting, and there's a lot to unpack there. I think one thing that I want to ask about and kind of ask you to expand a bit, a little bit, is this idea of training the models, right? I think it's a part of the AI kind of story that I think that kind of gets glossed over sometimes, which is, I think some people might go, okay, yeah, like it gets fed a lot of information, whether it's like manually with photos or with language or whatever. But this concept of training it. So can you like, yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, so how does that get done? Is it like someone just kind of grinding through and telling it like right, right, wrong, wrong, or is that more like localized? Like, what are we talking about here?
So it really depends on what kind of machine learning you're talking about. Is there a particular architecture or kind of technique that you'd like to learn a bit about? I can kind of say that in a simple sort of machine learning way, you can sort of kind of boil this down to a couple of steps. You have your input, which is the data that you're training on. You have your process, and you have your output. And so for this, if you're training on images for image recognition, you would have a big, large data set of images. You would divide this into a training set, which is how you can teach the model the features to learn, a validation set, so how you use this validation set to see how well the model is performing. This is something that you do not feed into your model at all. You only use it for validation, and then a test set. So this is how you can check and see that your model is working, and this is also new data to the model. It tends to be that you, if you have, say, 100 photos, you would give 80 of it to train on, 10 for validation, and then 10 for testing as well. But you really want these models to be as big as possible and to have a wide variety, so it can learn sort of every little feature and every little thing. So then,
So, like, well, sorry to cut you off, but I was just curious. So, in the hot dog example, I think that's a good one. So, imagine like you're telling it, this is a hot dog, this is a hot dog, this isn't a hot dog. When it looks, you know what I mean, like kind of giving it the rules to define what to classify a hot dog is. Are we like, does that require at this point still someone telling it all hot dogs look like this and all non-hot dogs don't have this, or is that simplifying it, I guess?
So in the simplest possible way, you will have hot dogs. Well, you'll have images that have already been classed as hot dogs or not hot dogs, and that has to usually be done manually. But now,
Hmm.
what you can do is that is a lot of work for a human to do, and that still happens with a lot of these models. You do need some sort of human involvement, because what happens sometimes is they have people that have made transformer models have tried to train on the output of these things, and what you end up happening is you don't have a model that is stable anymore. It's very vulnerable to not being able to converge on good weights or learning in the right way. And this basically means that your model will break very quickly and will not be useful for whatever you're trying to do with it. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of people who work on actually preparing data sets. This is really I would say the hardest problem in AI now is having these models that you can actually train on. We are actually running out of
Interesting.
information to train the biggest models that we have now, and this is going to be a problem with the next generation of transformer models. And so there are other techniques that probably need to be explored now, and we've sort of kind of seen the start of that. I would say that the models that we have now are probably not going to lead to AGI or anything like that. This is just one step that we can use to sort of mimic that. LLMs are probably not the key to that. There's still sort of learning that has to happen around that. As to what shape it takes, I'm not an AI researcher, so I don't really know what form that could take. But there's lots of work going into making things like foundation models, which could offer an alternative.
So, in the example of something like a Chat GPT or like a Gemini or whatever, a language model type thing, say, this is like gone a lot around the internet a lot of the time. Like, well, how many R's are there in strawberries? And then it spits out the wrong amount of R's or whatever. You know what I mean? Or some
Mhm.
example of it making a dumb mistake. The user then writes in, no, there are a blank amount of R's, right? What happens on the back? Like, how does it then like? How many times does it have to? I guess it would be different for each one, but like, what happens to like get it to correct itself? Like, is it like X amount of users have said you're not getting the amount of strawberry R's in strawberry right, or like how like because I can wrap my head around it on a smaller level when it's doing a very specific task like recognize these whales or sort these tumors or something like that. But when it's something more conversational or like more like subtle, like guessing how many are like telling someone how many R's there are in the letter names, in the word strawberry, like what goes on behind the curtain, I guess, a little bit.
So the way that large language models work is you have trained your data sets, you've got your transformer network, and then out of this you get a series of weights. That is then you can then ask it a question, and that question gets divided up into a series of tokens. And then what the model does is make its best guess on what it thinks is going to come next. And from this as well, if you were to ask a longer question, it would have an attention span, and that is a window in which it will remember what you tell it. However, for these kinds of questions where you ask it how many R's are in strawberry and all that, this tokenization, it means that this actually breaks down. And so it doesn't actually answer the question properly. And that is a limitation of the way that LLMs work. And there are lots of idiosyncrasies of human language, and asking questions in strange ways where machines don't actually know the answer, or even giving it new information that it hasn't seen before. It doesn't know what to do. And this is what I was kind of getting at earlier where all it really is a mirror. It cannot tell you anything new. It can only sort of rearrange the words and everything that you've already given it. It's a good way of connecting information, but if you want to do anything entirely new, it's not going to be able to do that for you.
Because it can't kind of guess. Like, it can't. I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. I see what you're saying. And
So
so
it can
you go on, go
guess.
on.
It can guess, but it can't guess right. But it's not going to sort of make massive leaps and bounds in logic. I would say
It's not
it's
making,
not.
like, an educated guess, I guess, right? Like, it's just kind of guessing, or
Well, it is an educated guess. It's the ultimate educated guess. It's learned exactly what you tell it to learn, and it's that
okay,
sort
I
of
see. Yeah,
thing
yeah,
that
yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
it's on a very straight line. It's very hard to sort of get away from that.
Interesting. So it more kind of breaks with, like, critical thinking, I guess, rather than guessing?
Well, yeah, but it's not. It's I mean, it's no. There's no critical thinking to it. It is just
Exactly.
learning exactly what you're telling it. It doesn't have insight. I'd say is the key word. And if we were to keep on, using these sorts of things for simple questions, I think we could lose our own insight as well.
And that's something we're gonna talk about later for sure. But I wanted to ask one more question on this kinda history of it or kinda general concepts. So you were mentioning earlier that, like, this isn't, like, totally new, right? It's been around for a bit. I remember, IBM Deep Blue and stuff like this, reading about stuff like this. But obviously, there has been this major boom, and it's especially over the last, like, 5 years, I think, where most people have now heard of it. Why do you like, why do you think that is? Like, what is it just better now, or is it just easier? Is the computing getting stronger? Why do you think all of a sudden we're hearing so much about it, and what kind of enabled it to get mainstream?
So AI has gone through a series of cycles and booms and busts really since the term was first popularized in the 60s. We had things called perceptrons that were able to sort of tell the differences between faces, but only faces in a certain database. And then in the 90s, we started having OCR, which is a optical character recognition, and that allowed us to sort of see text again. And then I believe in sort of the late 2000s, there was a breakthrough at the University of Toronto with a thing called AlexNet. And this was able to sort of first classify images. And that was as a consequence of the models that we're using. And this was sort of the new sort of signs of life in the AI industry. And this sort of started to open things up again. And then once people realized that this was possible, we then had, just as we had Deep Blue in the 90s, we had AlphaGo. So this was a game that's much more complicated than chess. And in the early 2010s, Google's DeepMind, led by Dennis something or other, who was later awarded the Nobel Prize, were able to put
Mhm.
together a computer that could beat one of the world's best Go players. And then this sort of started off next round. And then as the time went on, Google then published another paper. I think it's called Attention is All You Need, and this sort of kickstarted the transformer architecture, which was a new kind of machine learning. And this sort of led to all the AIs really that we have today. And what had happened there was a combination of algorithms and computers finally getting good enough to be able to process the insane amount of data that is needed for models like this as well. And then also, once you're able to do that, there was a very clear commercial need for this as well. And if you're able to monetize something, which is what we're seeing now, you will get lots more commercial buy-in and then investment. And then this thing goes on and on until either you have a bubble or you have a new sort of industrial revolution type thing. And we still need to decide, what's the kind of tool is this? Is it going to be like electricity and steam power? Is it going to really change the way that we work and the way that we live? Or is it going to be more like the internet, where it's just sort of an ease of life type tool? It's going to speed everything up. And
Yeah, it's
we're
a
sort of
great
in that phase
question.
right now.
Yeah, I feel, and that's exactly kind of the next kind of chunk of topics, right? Like, kind of where we are today. But before, one more question. This might be a really dumb question, but it came up to me while you were just saying this, and we were just kind of going through it. So this may be really stupid, but so you know how, like, when you're on Microsoft Word or whatever, and you spell a word wrong and it gets the little red squiggly line, like, is that kind of AI? Like, is spell check kind of?
So there's no such thing as a dumb question, I would
Yeah.
say. And I would say that for sort of spell check has been around for quite a while. I don't know exactly how long it's been, but I believe that spell check initially was not AI. It started off as that you would have a list of words that would be commonly misspelled, and then you'd sort of have a flag that would do this. I think there would probably be AI embedded now, but as for Microsoft's spell check, I think they're putting AI in all their products, and it would not surprise me if there's spell check in it now. But certainly in the past, it would not have been AI. You would just sort of have a list of common words that are misspelled, a list of right words, and if it's very similar to a word, you can calculate a score. It will tell you that, and then it will give you a list of words that it thinks that you're trying to spell. This can also be improved by learning how you spell words and then customizing to that. But again, maybe it's in there, maybe it's not. You would have to go up and look, but I'd say that it now with most Microsoft products there is AI embedded.
Yeah, I mean, Grammarly, right? That's like the classic one, the more modern. So, for what are like, if you could say, and this is a tough question, but like an interesting one, what are like kind of the most useful kind of today, like not in the future, but like just like that the way AI is being used? Like, so like what are some of the best use cases in 2025?
The best use cases for individuals or sort of more generally than that?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I guess both, but I would say like yeah, let's do three from a society level and a three from like a personal level.
So, I mean, it depends if, what's a society level thing, but I would say with AI, you're able to sort of deliver with personalized content and product recommendations. So this is really, you're sort of able to break down and give everybody exactly what they want. And, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it remains to be seen, but this will sort of, allow you to increase engagement and keep people using whatever products, you're selling them. I think companies will also be using AI as sort of a first line customer services and as customer support. This will sort of allow them to not hire as many people and then really sort of automating a lot of their repetitive menial tasks that have already been done. If we're talking about for individuals, on the same thing, it will allow you to automate a lot of tasks that you could do. So, for example, if you're trying to, I don't know, pay some bills or, you have some emails that are, very generic, AI can help you sort of write those. And then I guess sort of a nice fun one is it's allowing people to be more creative. And so we're sort of seeing that with generative AI. It's allowing people to sort of make images with certain features. So a while ago there was a really popular Studio Ghibli style images that people
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
generating and liking. And then I
He didn't
guess
like that though, Miyazaki.
no,
He
he
hated
doesn't
that.
like it
Yeah.
at all. Imagine, you have put all this art out here and it's getting stolen and put into these models without your permission. I think that's a whole other
Well, I
topic as
don't
well.
love that what your two ones for the society level were making better ads and automating jobs.
This is why companies want it. This is why they're putting so much money into these things because of the payoff about keeping people using the products and getting rid of headcounts. You know, this
Oh
is
yeah, that's how they save
what the
money.
market wants.
So do you think one big pro AI case that you hear a lot about is with medical stuff, whether it's diagnosing stuff or, drug discovery or stuff like that. I know that's a complex topic, but do you think that's a fair positive or do you think that's
Yes, I
overblown
think
or
I think it's been really useful. I believe the Nobel Prize for Chemistry was awarded to AlphaFold, which is a specific kind of AI model that has been used to figure out how protein structure forms, which was a very, very hard and open task in biology. And this has now actually been done and will hopefully speed up lots and lots of drug discovery and specifically personalized medicine as well. And then also on the diagnosis side as well, most of the time when you go into hospital and get a scan, it's just a series of images. And as an AI can be used to figure out if it's a picture of a hot dog or not. You can also do this on tumors or cancer-like things and really any disease. Again, you'd probably still have to talk to your doctor first, but this will sort of allow these things to be done faster. And the quicker that you can get a diagnosis, the quicker you can receive treatment, and the more likely you are to have a better health outcome. So AI is definitely going to revolutionize that as well. Then, I guess, sort of. on the other side as well, just as companies can use it to improve their efficiency, we all can as well. But I think there's also a dark side to this. I think a lot of people are using AI to do all the difficult things in life and to sort of, use it to compose messages to friends and loved ones and sort of automate things that, I think we need to probably be spending more time on as well.
Dude, my sister got a breakup text that was written by ChatGPT. That's so I couldn't believe it. I mean, yeah, people
So
are
that's
using it for therapy, people are using it for anything, right? And a lot of
yeah.
emotional things, which is
So
probably a
yeah,
larger conversation, but geez, right?
kind of a funny thing as well. Jeffrey Hinton, who was one of is the godfather of AI, he was actually broken up with as well with a Chat GPT message, which
Really?
is kind of funny to think. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things that a lot of people have such hot takes on, like I hear a lot of people saying this is just, AI slop is just late stage capitalism. They're just peddling stuff because they've run out of markets. I've heard a lot of people speak really highly of it, usually around the medical thing. I feel like the medical thing gets a lot of raving, and I can totally see the case. But I mean, so I guess a question for you is like, do you think this is one of those things that every job is going to be impacted by AI one way or another? Or do you think more jobs are susceptible to it than others? And like, how would you go about thinking about this?
So there are definitely some jobs that are more susceptible to it than others. There are jobs that are much easier to automate, and they tend to be white collar, middle management type jobs. And that is because most of these jobs, you're sitting in front of a computer, you're sending emails, you're doing sort of the tasks that any sort of well trained AI system could do. And this is, where companies like to cut a lot of headcount as well, where possible. And so these really are the most susceptible jobs. And so this is something that I think, if it's not handled in a careful way, there's going to be uh, an even bigger disconnect from those at the top and those at the bottom. And with this, you're sort of going to be creating a two-tiered society. Those in which, we say that AI cannot replace them, and those left behind and not being able to use these AI tools. And so this is why we've got to be really careful about how what impact these kinds of tools will have in society, and we've got to make sure that we have a conversation about what we really want from them, and is this the future that we want, and is there something we can do to make sure that this is equitable for all?
Would you say that what are some jobs do you think are like bulletproof or like in our lifetime bulletproof? I know it's hard to
I
predict because the future is crazy, but like if you
Well,
had to guess.
everything will change, but there'll always be jobs that you're doing with your hand. I doubt you'll find an AI system um, that will be able to do electrical wiring or plumbing, and maybe it can design what a room is to look like, but it can't actually physically put the places that. So anything to do with construction and building, I think you'll always need. And I know we've already mentioned that AI is going to have an impact in health, but I do always think you'll need a doctor, and I do think. Really any job where you're actually making something, it'll be sort of hard to replace. You will, at some point be able to get robots that will do that, but they are, further behind than where the actual AI models are. And, I'd like to think that there's still going to be places for writers and artists, but again, it still remains to be seen. And it
Well,
really
that was
depends
gonna
on
be
what we
my
want
next
to.
question. Well, and again, sorry to cut you off. It's just that's exactly because it's one of those interesting things that I think about a lot when thinking about AI is this idea of there's something that feels icky when you see AI replacing artists and musicians and basically any creative field. But then I also think about, a lot of people aren't shedding tears when the floppy disk manufacturers went out of business or when the seamstresses went, I mean, they were at the time in the Industrial Revolution, but no longer, right? Or the landline phone repair. And like this kind of balance between like natural technological progression and like this human side. And it's weird because it seems like people are comfortable, if not the people doing the job, obviously, but at large, oh, we have robots now at the Amazon factories lifting boxes up and moving things around. Oh, I can see that being useful. But then all of a sudden, when more creative stuff gets touched, people are like, all right, calm down now. I mean, why do you think that is? And it's more of a philosophical question, but I don't know. You kind of brought it up and now I'm thinking about it.
Well, what does that mean to you?
It's a good question. I mean, I mean, you could have art in a lot of things, right? You could say every job has some degree of art to it, right? I mean, from
Yeah,
cooking,
but
from even emails. I mean, but I would think
well,
creativity, right? Like,
wherever
like,
you get your joy from, if you get your joy from sending emails, good for you.
yeah, yeah, who
But
knows? We're not
but
judging.
what I
We're
would
not a
say,
judgmental show. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But what I would say as well is that people tend to associate art with something that is creative, something that is unique, something really an experience. And, is an experience something an AI model can have? Is it something that it can communicate? And, I would say, yes, it is definitely something an AI can do. But, is that a real emotion? Is that something that, if somebody has put, their hopes and dreams, their fears, everything that makes them into that one piece and allows you to communicate sort of maybe an experience, a connection. And, we need to decide, is that what we want? What do people actually want in art? Do they just want to see something that looks nice to them, or do they care about, what's gone into create it? And I think this is really up to the individual, but I'd say that I really have no issue with AI art, but, it has to be AI art. It is its own thing. And this is what people are sort of still deciding now. And I think because it's so sometimes very, very hard to tell the difference, we're sort of left in a liminal space, a grey area, where we don't know what's real and what's not. And that can be sort of very dangerous on sort of an emotional level. It doesn't give us really any comfort. The fact that, these machines can kind of, well, these algorithms, these processes, these techniques can really do just as well as us. And that's something that's taken us, years, lifetimes, and sort of whole, generations and cultures to be able to create this art. And here we are, we lose it all to a machine that doesn't even know what this technique, what this color means to us as individuals. And so we kind of lose our humanity in it. And so that's also something that's quite dangerous on sort of a spiritual level.
Yeah, totally. It's something that just seems so different from everything else because of all the things you just said. And it's interesting in terms of like being able to determine what's non-AI and what is AI, right? And I mean, up until this point, I feel like, now the images are getting really strong, but I think still most of the time, with some critical thought, you can go, all right, that looks fake, not always, right? There are some amazing, really accurate, but I feel like the videos are still fairly detectable, not always again, but mostly. How far away do you think we are from, undetectable AI from an image and video standpoint?
I think it's further away than people think it is, but it doesn't matter if it's if you can't detect it at all. It only matters what the majority of people think. If most people believe
True.
it's real, then that's the truth. That's we're now in a stage where the truth is whatever you make it, and so it doesn't matter if it's undetectable. As long as you can fool most people, then it's just as dangerous.
Totally. And one thing that, we even heard Trump say this, right? He said, if it looks really bad, just blame it on AI. And it's something Rick and I have talked about on our weekend, news podcast a couple of times. But this idea of just like blaming AI and having governments blame AI, and then like people going, yeah, people just, AI messes up. And it's almost kind of like this ultimate scapegoat. You can blame everything on AI, right? Like, that bad thing was done by AI. That ugly photo was AI. Oh, I wasn't there. It was AI. And AI can't like defend itself. You know what I mean? So like, I don't like, it's almost like there needs to be something that can just, there needs to be like you said, like more of a societal kind of slap on the wrist, I guess. Because right now it just seems like you can use AI, it can make a mistake, and people can just blame AI. And that's it. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
So we can kind of go back a bit further. In the 60s, 70s, companies started to use computers to automate a lot of tasks and jobs and to really make things more efficient. I believe it was a company, I'm pretty sure it was IBM, that said, you can't blame computers, you can only blame individuals. And, this is sort of, God, what's the quote again?
Sounds like guns don't kill people, people kill people. I mean, it's not the same, but it sounds like that. Yeah.
It's something like a computer can never be held, I think it's a computer can never be held accountable. And so we're sort of in the same situation with this as well, that, you cannot, there's no way really that you can hold an AI accountable. It just does exactly whatever you tell it and it's the emphasis is on exactly. And so you can never really use computers, or in this case AI, to make decisions because you cannot hold it accountable. Sure, it can help. Sure, it can give you all the information you need, a nice summary and a breakdown of all the lists and everything that you want to mention in a particular podcast episode. But at the same time, it's never, you cannot hold it responsible for if it tells you something wrong, or if it gives you, the wrong numbers. So you've got to be able to use your critical thinking and sort of parse what these things actually mean. And humans like to blame someone, and you cannot really blame an AI because it's not a person. And I think that sort of gets lost as well, is that people associate AI with like a physical object, something that actually exists, whereas it's something that we have created.
Exactly. And it's such an interesting thought, right? Because, it passes the Turing test, right? For people who don't know, like the Turing test, right, is can the chat fool you to thinking it's human? And I feel like because it passes it so well now that people think like treat it like a human,
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird. I don't know. It's weird. One thing that I wanted to talk about too is, and you mentioned this, it's almost kind of like a race to the bottom. I don't know if you've read the Nick Bostrom book, The Superintelligence. It came out like 5-6 years ago, even longer
I
probably.
have not.
It's a good book. It's a good book. I highly recommend it to everyone. Basically, I think he's a Swedish guy, and his argument was basically like everyone wants to have the best one because there's such a big economic reward at the end of the tunnel. So like there's not a real motivation to like have the level of regulation and slow mannered development that you would want for something that can get so transformative. And it's interesting because, you see now with the Trump administration this time, like all the tech guys basically doing everything in their power to basically remove all regulations with AI as possible. And it's working, right? They're doing it. But at the same time, you do have like, DeepSeek in China and all these, like there is this like kind of like race, who can make the best one. Is this unstoppable? You know what I mean? Like, is there any motivation because people are just so financially driven to just stop? And can
Well,
you see a world where that would happen?
well, these things can stop at any time. We just have to say that we don't want these things like the way that they are now. But when you have, a technology like AI, it will turn into a race, just like there was a race for the atom bomb in World War II. This is seen as it will give you an insurmountable advantage. And so, of course, you'll want a technology like this. Of course, they'll pursue it for whatever means they want to pursue it. But, we have to stop and consider what is the human cost of this. And, I would say that these kind of systems have started to lead to the deaths of people. And this is something that we do need to take into account as well. But as for, are we going to be able to say no to this kind of technology as a society? I don't think so. I think, the cat's out of the cradle, the toothpaste is out of the tube. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. And so we're now going to have to live in a world where this technology exists, and we need to try and be okay with it.
So do you think it's almost more similar to like you were saying, like the nuclear compare, like it almost needs to have like a mutual assured destruction, like a MAD kind of intervention. So it's almost more similar to the development of nuclear weapons than computers in a way, like from a societal impact way, not obviously directly, but you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would say, it's a bit more, there's no sort of, if you were to develop AGI and AGI wasn't to like us, it's not really mutually assured destruction. It is just assured destruction. And
Really?
so
Damn.
you've got to be really careful about these things. And this is why some people are really worried about the development that is happening and whether it should be in the hands of public
Can you
companies.
explain AGI a little bit?
So AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. This is something that we don't really have a consensus on a definition for. But the idea is it can do everything a human can do, and more thinking wise. It can think, it can feel, it can dream, it can have wants, it can have needs, and really it can do it all better than a human. The AGI that I think most people are kind of looking for is one that can, outperform humans on the tasks that we want it to do.
And once that happens, it's good night, you think? Like,
Well, it's not. I don't think it will be a good night per se. I think it really depends on the reasons that you create a machine like this. And, imagine if you were to put, a thing with human-like intelligence in a prison and get it to do all the jobs that you don't want to do. I don't think that's very fair and cruel. And, how
It's
would
like
you
that
feel
movie Deus
if...
Ex Machina in a way.
Yes, so it's Ex Machina,
Ex Machina, yeah, yeah.
is the film. Yes, that's a very good film
Great
by
movie, yeah.
Alex Garland. Yes, he's got a more recent one called Civil War as well, that's also quite good.
And one thing we haven't even talked about really, and this is one that, you hear all the time as a criticism, is the environmental impacts. Are those, like, legitimate? Like, what are we talking about here with? Because not only do you hear about it from, like, an environmental point of view, we hear it from an energy use point of view. Like, what is that a really big problem? Like, how big of a problem is this?
So for energy usage, the algorithms that are needed to train these AIs need big data centers. Big data centers need a lot of chips, and the chips need a lot of power. Power in the US typically it tends to come mainly from coal. I'm not actually sure what the makeup of it is anymore. I haven't worked in the US energy industry for a number of years,
A lot of natural
but
gas too.
yes, coal, natural gas, which burns a lot of, which produces a lot of carbon. And depending on where you put these things as well, you'll need to build whole new data centers, and that's all a whole supply chain that you would need to consider. But the main issue I think people have with this now in the US is the price of energy. And so what's happening now is energy bills are actually getting more expensive in the US, and that is because of the need for energy for these big, massive data centers. And so this is going to cause probably some headaches if the US in the future. They also don't really have the infrastructure to support these things now, and this is something that they're going to have to really do. As for the climate impacts, I mean, it's just the same as any other kind of construction as well, and it just sort of depends on what you actually want as a society. The US's carbon emissions has been dropping, but that has mainly been due to manufacturing and other heavy industries being offshored. And so if you were to sort of take all the emissions and reshore them again, it's probably still been climbing. But people also worry about the water usage of AI in terms of cooling and actually other things to do with these models. I would say that most of that is kind of overblown. But at the same time, they do still need lots of water. And when you use water, it goes in one end, comes out the other, and it will be in a different place. And so because the water, follows, the usual path, we need to be aware of what impact that can have in sort of the local area as well.
So every time someone says data centers or like talking about center development, that's usually tying to AI. Like that, the only reason why you'd have a data center is for AI. Is that true?
So you wouldn't just need a data center for AI. It's really needed for sort of storing data and using computers that make up what we call the cloud. And that could be sort of
Gotcha.
hosting a website, sort of storing information somewhere. And a lot of the times people want to have these sorts of infrastructures in your own country is that they are a national security thing. You do need to be able to have access to these sorts of computers. And more recently as well, America wants to start storing its data in America and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, right? So now like taking a look kind of towards the future a little bit. So the overarching question, what this episode will be titled probably is, should we be freaking out about AI? And it's a long conversation, but I guess I'm going to ask you straight up, should we be freaking out about AI?
In one word, I would say probably not. No. If we're going just for one word,
No, no, yeah,
I
but
don't.
why?
So that's kind of the harder thing, I would say. Day to day, I think it is going to lead to lots and lots of changes in our life. But I think the hype is still overblown. I still think AGI is much further away than we think it is. And I like to think that, we've survived lots of these changes and industrial revolutions before. I think the nature of the work that we do will change. And I think we've just got to be prepared for whatever change that will come.
One upside case that I tend to make when I'm talking about this with friends is like when cell phones were invented, okay, we did lose a lot of landline phone construction jobs and stuff like that. But not only did it create jobs in the cell phone industry, but all the apps and all the different companies that couldn't exist without cell phones. So it almost created new just economies and new kind of markets and jobs. Do you see something like that happening, like with all the space that AI is freeing up? Like, do you think that's just kind of in the the nature of the human brain, to like use that space to just find more industries and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, people have always worked and they will always need to work, and so there will be new jobs to sort of fill the space. Whether they'll be as rewarding as they were before, that remains to be seen. I think we really need to decide what we want as a future. Nobody can really make a decision now, and so I think we're all left in the lurch, and we're left in a stage, a grey zone, a liminal space where we don't really know what's coming next, and it'll be interesting to see what will happen. But I do think there will be jobs. They'll just probably look a bit different than what we are now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I agree. I mean, but they can be temporarily a bad thing, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm sure all the seamstresses and whatever, like the tailors and whatnot, when the sewing machine was invented, I'm sure they weren't thrilled. and well, one
Hmm.
thing, so I was going to ask you this question too. So, obviously this gets comped to the Industrial Revolution a lot. And one thing that kind of emerged out of the Industrial Revolution was this kind of, again, like a race to the bottom with wages in a way, right? Because all of a sudden now you only need one person working the sewing machine, but you had 50 people there before. They all want the job. So it becomes almost like who will do it for the cheapest. And this is a lot of the reason what led to like, a lot of the child labor, factory workers and stuff like that. And what you kind of see it to an extent with globalization, with offshoring different things, right? Do you think, I guess that would be a really bad outcome, at least in the medium and short term. What do you think about that? Like we're too far
Well,
along?
this is why we need strong unions, and this is why we need strong workers' rights as well. These are hard-won freedoms that took generations to get, and we're at risk of throwing them all away if we're not careful. And so this is where we really need to sort of group together and make sure that everybody's getting looked after in this new world as well. And this comes from collective bargaining and being able to get together and decide what is a fair wage and take an equal share of the profits. Whether that will actually happen with AI remains to be seen.
Could you see a world where like, because like you were saying, like, the everyday user is in a way helping train the AI or improving it. I mean, think about how much better ChatGPT has gotten since it first came out, right? We're on ChatGPT 5 now. I mean, it feels so much better than it was then. Do you I mean, should people be getting paid? I don't know, like should we be getting like some sort of royalty for like making them money? I don't know, like I know that's sounds insane, right? We pay to use it, but it's just one of those things that like it almost gets better without even people knowing that they're helping it get better.
Yeah, but this is the deal that we use to get these products for free anyway. There are still sort of lawsuits happening about the training data that went into a lot of these models now, and publishers and newspapers like the New York Times are suing to try and get their fair share. And that is because their information has been used without any compensation. And making that data took employees years and years, well, hundreds of years really, to put together the whole New York Times. As for us getting paid to use it, that is the deal with the devil that you make whenever you agree to the terms and conditions. And so there's really nothing that we can do at this point.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? Like it just kind of, like you said, the genie's out of the bottle in a way, in that way. So like I know that this is an impossible question because predicting the future is impossible, but like over the next few years, what are some, like we are just getting, one of the things that I'm kind of getting a little sidetracked is like we just get pumped with AI stuff now. Like I feel like every commercial, everything with AI this, sometimes I feel like meaninglessly, like, what are you talking about? Like, we didn't need AI here. Do you think that will kind of fade away and it will consolidate around like a few things? Or do you think we're just going to continue to get like the fire hose of AI products over the next 5-ish years?
Well, as with all things, it is the buzzword at the time. I do think it will probably die down and it'll be in just the products that we want it to be in. But at the same time, we've got to decide as a society what we actually want. And if we do want AI powered fridges and AI powered random things, they will give it to us.
So do you think like, how would that even be done? You think it'd be like a UN thing where they like make a UN council of AI or something like that? I know, not a great showing from Trump at the UN yesterday, him rambling about how climate change is fake. But
So,
in a functioning society, globalized society, is that where it would have to be?
well, it would be nice if we could have international cooperation like we used to have in climate change with the Paris Agreement. But I think these things are very slow moving, and I think AI is moving quite quickly at the moment. And there's no need or want to do this sort of thing. The UK tried to do this. I think it was about a year ago now, where they had a big summit and they got all the players together to try and agree what to do about these sorts of models, and nothing was really agreed. You've got people trying to put limits on the size of these models and the amount of compute that's used for them, and we have that in the EU. And I think they attempt to do it in California as well, and then China does whatever China does, and so we're sort of left in a world where you can sort of choose where you want to train your model depending on what suits you. And so
In the
it's
regulations
really,
at the local place, yeah.
it's sort of why would you go to do it in a high regulation place when you can do it in a low regulation place? So, as you said, it could be a race to the bottom.
It's interesting. So it's kind of one of those things that, like, kind of going to the panic question where some people specifically maybe should be panicked, but as a society, maybe not. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a smooth ride.
No, I think we're going to be in for a lot of change very quickly. And if we're not careful, people could be left behind, and that's not good for any society.
And you think it's like this middle manager-y type white collar? Because one thing too that I think about a lot is that it kind of replaces like the entry-level analyst really well. But obviously, like you were mentioning, like you got to check the work. But how will people get the experience to check it, right? Like I imagine imagine someone who's like 12 years old right now on how different the workplace will be when they're either graduating university or graduating high school. How will they get the experience needed to know how to do stuff?
We're already seeing this now with sort of senior software developer roles and junior ones. There is no need to hire sort of a junior and middle management now. So there's going to be a massive gap between the people that have the skills and the people that don't. And, we are increasingly living in that world. And that's why we've got to be really careful about how we roll out these tools and how we use them. And, what do we want for the future generations? Do we want humans to lose these skills, or do we want to still be able to have humans that can do sort of these tasks?
So yeah, it's almost like the biggest risk isn't even like the job thing, because you can just have people do stuff. It's more just like getting dumber, I guess, right? Like, or maybe like losing skills, like
Yeah,
that's honestly the biggest risk if I'm hearing you right.
yeah, more being de-skilled than anything else. And do we want to sort of give away these skills to the model and lose the sorts of things? So let's be
Yeah,
really
we can get
careful about what we
idiocracy
actually want.
live, right? Like, I mean, I guess that's the worry. Yeah, so that's an interesting way to put it, right? That you can pay people to do whatever, I guess, if you need to find a way. But
Oh.
do we want to live in a world where people can't do things and they must rely on models to do it? And you could argue that's been happening, right? With a lot of like things with their hands, and how many people can actually like manufacture a remote controller, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever, like something that you
Mhm.
use. Like it's already dipping over time. So yeah, will this just accelerate that de-skilling to such a point where as a society, we don't know how to do anything, but we're getting paid to kind of bumble around because we have models to do what we want?
Well, yeah, but you know, if you were to take everybody in as a society, you would be able to put together a process to manufacture a remote control. What if, we lost the skills to do one particular part because we gave it to an AI model? We would no longer have, a fully formed process to be able to do something to make a thing that we use every day. And so, we've got to be careful about, what kind of things do we want to give away and what kind of things do we want to keep for us.
It's like a trade secret almost, in a way. It's an interesting way to think about it, and it's probably that one and the one with the art that is probably the most immediately contentious, right? Because I guess you could argue also art is a skill in the same vein, but you're right. There's this kind of emotional humanity aspect too. But I agree with you. I'm not anti-AI art either. I just think that, like you said, it needs to be categorized as such. It's when it's blended and this is going to be, like this is just going to become more and more of a talking point the better and better it gets, right? Like it's been easy to ignore it when it spits out gobbledygook, you know what I mean? But that's getting less and less frequent with the usage going up and up and up, right? Like I feel like it's easy to have like some level of moral restraint when it sucks, you know what I mean? But like when financial decisions are made, and people always, I feel like, kind of to an extent gravitate towards the cheapest and most efficient thing, and that'll be a much more of a siren song when it's actually making good stuff, like universally accepted good stuff, which I feel like isn't totally there. But you're seeing it with video games. You hear like Sony, Xbox, these people being like, we're going to start making games with AI. I feel like people just suck this stuff up. Last question, and then I'll let you go to bed because I know it's super late in Korea. And it's one of those things, it's more, again, a more of a philosophical question, but a question that I think kind of ties a lot of this together. Is one of the biggest driver, I think, for people's decisions is their economic condition, right? Like, I think that it's hard for people to care about the environment, even society at large, when they feel like, hey, I can't even afford my groceries. Who gives a crap about the rights of X or whatever like this? And so I often feel like economic equality, wealth distribution, stuff like this is like the kind of underpinning of a lot of these kind of larger scale things. Do you think like there's any world, well, I guess there's one is the fairy tale world of we can help advance economic equality, which is already challenging. But like, is there kind of like this like positive feedback loop that could maybe exist where, AI helps accelerate economic equality, therefore dipping the need a little bit for the amount of greed that we have, because then people can then all of a sudden have that taken care of and think of things a little bit more macro, a little bit more society level. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would say that there's no future really that AI would be used as a tool to decrease economic inequality. Tools like these are always used by the rich, and
Damn.
we will continue as developed countries to use tools like these to sort of keep the system as it is. And then you'll have people that can use the tools and people that can't use the tools, and this will make a two-tiered system if we're not careful. And as with all sort of massive changes, we've got to, at least attempt to try and make them as equitable as possible. And that can include, making the tools free for people to use, and then also being able to properly train people to, use these tools, realize, what is a fake AI generated image, what's and sort of, just general sort of hygiene around these things as well. And, maybe that will make the integration of these tools into society easier and sort of demystify how these things actually work, you know, could sort of lead to, one less burdened by AI.
Okay, one more last question, and then I'll actually let you go because I just thought of one.
That's fine.
So one thing, with a lot of technology tools in particular, like you just mentioned, like from basics like Excel stuff, even code, anything like, there's this clear incentive to get better at them and use them more and just get more comfortable with them. But with AI, it seems almost like slightly a double-edged sword, to your point, that like you want to be exposed to them and get good with them. But at the same time, if you use them all of the time, you could get de-skilled, right? You get dumber. How do we deal with this fine line? Because I'll talk to friends and I'll be like, you should use this stuff so you know how to get better with it. And like people get trained on it, at law firm, people are just getting trained with this. But like, is the training dangerous? Because I don't think you could really argue that with other technology as much. I mean, maybe mental math with a calculator, but whatever. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, every tool is dangerous in the wrong hands, but I think as with all these things, education is a very powerful weapon and help everybody live in the new world and be able to use the tools that we do develop. And so, this is sort of, just as people learn to read and write and, do maths, this is going to have to be part of the education system now. And, this will hopefully sort of get rid of some of the negatives that we have with this technology.
So you would encourage people to use it and learn about it who are listening?
Yeah, I would say definitely it's something that is coming whether you like it or not, and you've got to make sure that you're familiar with it and can sort of engage and be comfortable with it in your life. And I'm not saying that it has to, you have to use it to send messages to your friends. You use it to create the art that you do, or to sort of understand things. Replace the learning that you do by reading a book or going out and exploring the world. It is a tool that you can use to enhance those experiences. That's something that shouldn't replace, just as the internet sort of changed our relationship to information and its access to it, this is going to do a very similar thing. And so with the world changing as rapidly as it is, you need to be able to use these tools and hopefully acknowledge the limitations of it right now and be comfortable with what's going to happen next.
It's interesting stuff. But okay. All right, I'll let you go to bed. Thank you so much. I learned, this has been so interesting and also very helpful. I've learned so much about this, and it's really cool to hear your perspective on it because it's a lot to digest,
The world is very complicated, and we've got to try our
The
best
world
to try
is
and
a lot.
understand. Just
The world is annoying. It's too much going on. All right. Well, I feel good. Thank you so much, Ivo.
no worries. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Let me know what you think, too, on YouTube. Comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. What do you think? Should we be freaking out? Do you agree with Ivo? Do you disagree? What are we missing here? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can write us in at thelonelyliberalpodcast@gmail.com, or just like I said, comment on YouTube. Yeah, I'm really curious. We'll be back on Sunday with Rick to go over the news like usual. And until then, take it easy, guys. Bye.